There is a construction project in São Paulo that, little by little, without making noise proportional to its size, is becoming one of the greatest demonstrations of strength in Brazilian infrastructure. And perhaps that is exactly what makes so many people look at it with surprise, admiration, and in some cases, even discomfort. Because what is advancing there is not just another highway. It is a message. It is a project that shows the size of São Paulo's logistical ambition and a state's ability to move the country's economic chessboard with concrete, steel, excavation, and strategic planning. The name of this project is Rodoanel Norte, the final stretch of the Mário Covas Ring Road, and it has already reached 68% completion. At first glance, this number might seem like just another technical data point, but it is not. When we talk about 68% of a project of this magnitude, we are talking about a decisive phase of an endeavor that began way back in 1998, with the idea of reorganizing the heavy traffic of the country's largest metropolis. The logic was clear. Remove a portion of the trucks from urban roads, relieve the pressure on the expressways, and create a more efficient integration between the main highways arriving in São Paulo. Except now, what is at stake goes far beyond traffic. The final stretch of the Rodoanel Norte closes a missing piece in a gigantic logistical gear. This segment will connect the Fernão Dias Highway to the Raimundo Pereira de Magalhães Avenue, closing the missing link between already delivered stretches. In practice, this means creating a new alternative for the flow of cargo in a region that concentrates a decisive part of Brazil's economic activity. And it is precisely here that this project stops being merely from São Paulo to become national. Because every time São Paulo improves its logistical capacity, it produces an effect on supply chains, distribution, industry, exports, and competitiveness. The impact spreads, and what happens there matters to the entire country, even if many people haven't realized it yet. When we look at the physical scale of the project, what appears is something that completely escapes the idea of a simple road. The north stretch is approximately 44 kilometers long and crosses São Paulo, Guarulhos, and Arujá. But what impresses is not just the distance. It is what was necessary to make this connection exist. The project includes 107 special engineering structures. Between bridges and viaducts, in addition to 7 double tunnels, which are often described as 14 tunnels because each lane has its own gallery. This alone shows the level of complexity involved. It is not about clearing a path on easy terrain, but about overcoming complicated topography, dense urban occupation, sensitive areas, and a series of technical challenges that transform every kilometer into a precision operation. It is precisely at this point that the project gains an almost symbolic dimension. The Rodoanel Norte does not advance over free and simple space. It needs to be built in an environment where every cut in the terrain, every retaining wall, every excavation, and every elevated structure requires extreme control. There is a constant concern with safety, stability, the impact on nearby communities, and the geological behavior of delicate areas. In other words, it is not enough to build. It is necessary to build with technical obsession. That is why the project has become a kind of showcase of what Brazilian heavy engineering can still achieve when there is scale, coordination, and strategic priority. One of the episodes that best reveals the dimension of this challenge happened on an excavation front considered geologically complex, where 32,000 cubic meters of material were removed. For many people, this number alone doesn't say much, but when compared to 13 Olympic swimming pools, the perception changes completely. We are not talking about a simple terrain adjustment. but a brutal transformation of the landscape to allow the passage of an infrastructure designed to reorder the flow of goods. During this stage, about 300 workers were active at the peak of operations. This data point is fundamental because it shows that behind the grandeur of the concrete structures, there is an intense, specialized, and constant human mobilization. It is a project that depends on teams working at the limit of technique, evaluating structural safety, and dealing with an environment where mistakes are costly. Another detail that helps to understand the level of sophistication of the project is the adoption of plasma, fragmentation to break rocks in a controlled manner. Instead of more aggressive methods, the choice of a technique with less vibration indicates a direct concern with predictability and safety in sensitive areas. And this is not just any detail. It says a lot about the type of work being executed. It is not brute force simply pushing the terrain. It is fine control engineering, applied in a scenario where any impact needs to be coldly calculated. As if all this were not enough, there is also a visual and structural element that helps transform the Rodoanel Norte into a symbol of grandeur. One of the viaducts of the final stretch will have pillars up to 50 meters high, roughly equivalent to a building of more than 15 stories. It is an imposing structure that emerges as part of a project that was paralyzed for years and now needs to make up for lost time. In fact, the works on the North Stretch began in 2013, but went through a painful interruption of about 6 years, leaving structures exposed to the elements and generating accumulated costs. In the case of this gigantic viaduct, the main beams had to be completely remade after the long period of exposure. Resuming the work was not simply picking up where it left off. It was, in many places, recovering, revising, and rebuilding from scratch before proceeding. The highly anticipated resumption finally occurred on April 25th, 2024, already under the current concession, in a titanic process that involved contractual reorganization, massive team mobilization, and a review of priority fronts. Since then, the work has begun to advance much more concretely and visibly. An important milestone came on December 23, 2025, when the first operational segment was officially delivered, connecting the Presidente Dutra Highway to the Fernão Dias. This delivery did not represent the final completion of the project, but it proved irrefutably that the stretch was effectively getting off the drawing board again. Now, with total completion scheduled for the second half of 2026, according to the concessionaire Via SP Serra of the Via Appia Group, what is taking shape on the horizon is the final stretch of a project that carries decades of accumulated expectation. And then arises the question that bothers many people outside the borders of São Paulo. What really happens when this ring finally closes? The answer is as simple as it is powerful. Trucks gain a fast and direct route outside the chaotic expressways, and the movement of cargo linked to the vital Port of Santos and the main road corridors of the metropolitan region becomes infinitely more efficient. São Paulo's logistics become much stronger, more agile, and more economical, further expanding its already considerable competitive advantage over the rest of the country. That is why this project provokes so many and such varied reactions. For some, it is a clear and admirable example of long-term state vision. For others, it crudely exposes the deep inequality of investment and execution capacity between Brazilian states when it comes to large-scale infrastructure. And perhaps that is exactly where the greatest discomfort lies. The Rodoanel Norte is not just a brilliant road solution for traffic, but an undeniable demonstration of territorial, economic, and strategic power. It shows how infrastructure is also a fierce dispute for relevance, productivity, and absolute command over the commercial flows that move the country. Ultimately, What is being completed there is not just an asphalted highway stretch, but a state materializing its ambition in tons of concrete, completely reorganizing its logistical space and reinforcing its indisputable position at the neuralgic center of the Brazilian economy. At the end of the day, the Rodoanel Norte is not just a construction project. It is an imposing symbol of unbridled ambition, logistical power, and a silent dispute that happens far from the media spotlight. But that moves the foundations of the economy, transportation, and the future of all of Brazil. While many people are still debating in forums what should be done, São Paulo is there, working day and night, closing a strategic ring, erecting giant viaducts, drilling tunnels into solid rock, and showing, in practice, how infrastructure is, in essence, pure power. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think this is just a massive highway to relieve traffic? Or is it a clear demonstration from those who want to keep commanding the game of development and the economy in the country? Comment down below to open this debate. And if you like this kind of detailed analysis, leave your like right now, because it helps this video reach more people.
Music licensing reimagined.